All right, so we find ourselves with eased COVID-19 restrictions. Yay, I hear you say, but our pockets are not in for a break. Rising fuel, manufacturing and logistics costs are looming. According to supermarket chain Pick n Pay, prices are going to hit South Africans very hard this year. So just how hard? Let's speak to agricultural economist Paul Makube joining us now to find out how, Paul, good morning to you, we can prepare ourselves for the damage that is coming. Fuel just went up and we know the knock-on effect. But when we talk about manufacturing costs, agricultural costs, how bad is it going to get? Good morning.
Good morning and thanks for having me. Yeah, definitely the cost pressures have been there. We saw that actually prior to the current agricultural season, prices of fertilizer skyrocketing due to general shortages on the local and international market, and the rand-dollar exchange rate, as well as your higher crude oil prices. So these have been building over time. It is now worsening now with the recent increase in the fuel costs that will affect the distribution of product, but also on manufacturing of various food commodities. But typically the distribution of food will be affected by the higher costs for food.
Because we know there's always this knock-on effect every time we see the fuel price go up as well. The cost of the food goes up, but that's because the cost of the manufacturing and logistics goes up as well. Why aren't the big manufacturers, the big supermarket chains like Pick n Pay that I mentioned in my introduction, why aren't they able to absorb more of that cost? Because it does translate to more money being spent by consumers. Or am I asking an unfair question?
Well, it's a right question, but the question is, as I've indicated, the absorption of this cost have been there for quite some time. From the beginning of COVID, we've been seeing the rise in costs, and to some extent there has been some accommodation from the retailers. And not necessarily passing, costs, but it has now become unsustainable given the continued increase in these costs. Fortunately, on the agricultural side, although we had inclement weather that has briefly interrupted production, the country is still sufficiently supplied in terms of the major agricultural foods. And also, despite the cost pressures, we have managed to produce enough. Even the current crop that has been affected by inclement weather is still going to produce a sizable crop, and that combined with carryover stock should actually somewhat offset the expected increase in prices. So yes, from a supply perspective, we are adequately supplied. But the cost is relatively on the logistics side in terms of the cost of fuel. And by the way, the consumer as well is under pressure, and if this continues, it will be difficult for them actually to deal with the situation in the next few months.
Yep. Paul, let me ask you this as my final question to you. In the end, this all comes down to this up and down fuel price. When I say up and down fuel price, more up than down. And there are calls for the fuel price to be re-looked at. I understand I'm not talking to you about the fuel price necessarily, but that's where all these problems stem from. Is there a point where you agree or disagree that the fuel price needs to be re-looked at so we don't have all these knock-on effects that you're talking to me about as an expert? Would you agree we need to change the way the fuel price is developed and constructed?
This investigation is long overdue. We had several announcements around the need to actually review the way we calculate or determine the fuel price, or look at the various factors that affect the fuel price, and nothing hasn't been coming forth. So it's long overdue.
Paul, I appreciate your time. Long overdue, according to agricultural economist Paul Makube joining us this morning. A lot of people talking about the fuel price needs to be re-looked at. How is it put together? What are the various charges from government, the taxes, etc., because that's what's driving up these prices of logistics companies, which which pushes up the prices of any of the goods that you and I go buy in the store. So it does have a knock-on effect as well. No doubt we're going to have a lot more to discuss about the fuel price.